All right, so we've talked about the Super Bowl, and now that we've got that out of the way, let's wrap up the NFL season as a whole. There were a lot of teams that were expected to go places, and a lot of other teams that weren't expected to do so well, but they managed to pull off some upsets and maybe get themselves into playoff contention towards the end there. So, Gary, who are your biggest surprises and disappointments from this NFL season?
So, like Mac, when we were discussing this topic on the show today, that we want to talk about biggest disappointments and biggest disappointments and biggest surprises. Like we were saying, like there was a lot of disappointments. I mean, disappointments, I feel like in sports always tamper to expectations. So my first disappointing team, I'm going to have to give it to the 49ers. Simple as that. I'm going to have to give it to the 49ers. And it's sad to say, just because the Niners obviously are one of our hometown teams here in Sacramento, and they really had a chance going back to Super Bowl, especially with that defense last year. And obviously they do get hit with injuries, but at the end of the day in this league, it's still about winning. And they know too, like no excuses can be made, even though basically the whole team felt like it was out at one point. But
not just the whole team, but the whole second team
exactly.
as well.
So
they had a lot of players.
I don't want to put them as too much of the biggest disappointment, but in terms of what I really thought going into the season of them contending, them not making the playoffs was a big disappointment in my eyes. Also, I gotta put a big disappointment really to the Vikings. The Vikings was a team last year. In the last 2-3 years, they've been knocking on the door in the playoffs, actually beating the Saints a few years back, and really been having a switch on just been having weapons and having their way in that division in terms of still making the playoffs and doing their thing. So them falling off to a 7-9 record this year, I believe, was a big shakedown, a big drop off of what we expected. And the last team that I gotta put on this list is gonna be kind of weird to say, but like I said, expectation is what matters here. And KC to me it's failure in terms of not failure in the sense of the season, but because to be honest with you, all year everyone had them winning the Super Bowl. No doubt, majority they're still favored, and injuries happen like we said for the Niners. Injuries happened to them, but they had to get it done, and they just didn't get it done. And I had no worries at all. I'll be honest with you, Mac. I didn't even imagine Tampa winning. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna give thought to Tom getting 7, but hey. The GOAT proved us wrong again. Can't not doubt Mr. Brady. And yeah, those are my top 3 teams right there: Niners, KC, and the Vikings as the biggest disappointments. So you can go ahead and we'll do it back on surprises.
Man, there are a lot of contenders to pick from as far as disappointments, and I'm tempted to put the Seahawks as one of them, just for their lackluster playoff performance. But I won't do it for now. But know that I'm very upset. I'm sure we'll talk about them later on in the off season, because it seems like they're just surrounded by drama at the moment. For one of my disappointments, I'm gonna go with the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury, that trade they made to get DeAndre Hopkins. I was really high on the NFC West at the beginning of the year. They added that extra wild card berth, and I was looking at it as a possibility. This could be a time when every team in the NFC West makes the playoffs. And I believe had the Niners been healthy, they would have made the playoffs. The Cardinals, I just can't say the same. And, I hate to say it, but I think it comes down to Cliff Kingsbury. I wasn't high on him when he first got hired to Arizona, and I'm still not that high on him now. They had the roster to make the playoffs. They were in perfect position to do it, right? And for them to finish 8-8, I think that's really disappointing. You lost out to the Chicago Bears, and you know how much turmoil they had in the second half of the year. And I just think with as good as Kyler Murray is and as good as DeAndre Hopkins is, you have to make the playoffs with that roster. And for them not to do that was very disappointing. I know they lost out in the last week of the season, but they shouldn't have been in that position to begin with, I don't think. I think they were plenty good enough to make the playoffs, and they're one of my disappointments.
Yeah, Mac. Yeah.
For the other two, I'm going to do a double in the AFC West. I'm disappointed in the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's talk about the Broncos first. I expected this to be the year that the Broncos make a big jump as far as, building their team and getting into playoff contention. I mentioned that 7th wild card spot, and I thought they were prime contenders to do that. Maybe even give Kansas City a run for their money for the first 10 weeks of the regular season, giving them a run of their money as far as the divisional lead. I thought Drew Lock was going to make that next step. I thought that defense was going to be decent, and maybe losing Von Miller really hurt them more than what it appeared to be. I know they basically had to forfeit a game by starting a wide receiver at quarterback against the Saints, but for them to finish 5-11 is really disappointing, and I thought it seems like Drew Lock regressed a little bit throughout the season, and that's just not what I was expecting coming into the season. And as far as Vegas goes, come on, 8-8, man, John Gruden, what are you doing down there? They weren't perfect. They had a great first half of the season. It looked like they were going to be right in the running for that 5 or 6 seed in the AFC, and then they completely tailed off towards the end. I think no better game Eclipse emphasizes that than the loss against Miami, when they just threw it away with stupid penalty after stupid penalty and really took themselves out of the race. So I expect a lot more from both of those teams in the AFC West. So those are my 3 most disappointing teams.
Yeah, I mean, real quick on your teams, Cardinals, I believe, like you said, they shouldn't make the playoffs, but at the same time, I was like, the division, like I said, expectation, I didn't really think they were going to make the playoffs. But then also the Raiders, I expected them, like you said, when in the beginning of the season, I didn't think they would make the playoffs. I think they'll be close, like they ended up being. But actually, like you said, actually watching, going through the season, you felt majority of the year that they were going to make the playoffs. So that obviously, once going through the season, felt like a disappointment. And like the last team you mentioned was the Broncos. I just knew the Broncos weren't going to be good, my brother, just because they had no quarterback. I don't believe in Drew Lock. So I was like, yeah, and Von Miller was obviously a big deal. So yeah, I can see where you're going, though, because for sure I think the one that should have been on there maybe is Tampa. Not Tampa, excuse me, Cardinals. But yeah, the Cardinals I meant. But yeah, but now switch lanes to the surprise teams, like you mentioned. The surprise teams, in my opinion, it's going to sound a little biased, but I'm going to say the Pittsburgh Steelers as one of the surprise teams, Mac. I don't remember no one having the Steelers making the playoffs. I know no one thought we were going to go. I believe we went 12-4. Yeah, 12-4 in the year. So, and I know no one thought we were going undefeated for how long we did. For I think about 11 games we're undefeated. So, I just don't.
But who knew your first 12 games were going to be against scrubs?
Okay, don't play us now. We beat some good teams on that run, and now you got me off the top of my dome right now. Don't make me look at the schedule. I'm gonna start looking. Hey, we beat the Browns in the beginning. We beat the Ravens in the beginning. Hold on. Nah, I see what you.